Hi, I'm Nina Simone, your prodigal parent life coach. Today's video is stop repeating yourself and what to do when your adult child isn't listening. So, if you felt like you've been having the same conversation with your adult child over and over and over again, this is for you. I know you've explained it, you've reminded them, you warned them, you've shared your concerns, you've even pointed out the consequences, and yet nothing changes. Eventually, you start to think, why am I still repeating myself? And if you're the parent of an adult prodigal child, you've been there. And if we're honest, it's frustrating. Not only because your child isn't listening, but because you genuinely care about them and what's going on. And you can see their choices and where they are leading them. You can see the problems coming. You see the pain they're creating for themselves or even others. And because you love them, you keep trying to get through to them. Well, today I want to talk about what to do when your adult child isn't listening and why repeating yourself often isn't the answer. Repetition doesn't always create change. Many parents believe if I just explain it one more time, maybe they'll get it. Maybe they'll finally understand. But here's reality: most adult children are not lacking information, they're making choices. Think about that. The issue is often not that they don't know what you think. The issue is that they have chosen to do something different. That can be difficult for parents to accept because it feels like if we could just find the right words, everything would change. But sometimes the problem isn't communication, it's willingness. So before you repeat yourself, I want you to ask, have I already clearly communicated my concern? If the answer is yes, then continuing to repeat it may not be productive. Many parents find themselves saying the same thing, but in different ways. You use different words, different examples, different conversations, but the message remains the same. At some point, repeating yourself can create nothing but background noise. Your child already knows your position on the matter. Repeating it may simply cause them to just tune you out. So, as parents, why do we keep repeating ourselves? Many times we aren't repeating ourselves because our child needs to hear it again. We're repeating because we're anxious. We repeat ourselves because we care, we feel responsible, or we repeat ourselves because we're afraid of what will happen if they don't change. In other words, repetition often becomes an attempt to control an outcome we cannot control. And I know that realization can be uncomfortable. So we have to figure out what to do instead. Instead of repeating yourself, I want you to consider these three steps. Number one, say it clearly once. Clear communication is important. Say what needs to be said, be honest, be respectful but direct. Then trust that your message has been delivered. Not every concern requires 10 conversations. Sometimes one clear conversation is enough. And then number two, allow them space. Many parents become uncomfortable with the silence. So they fill the silence with more advice, more reminders, more warnings, more explanations. But growth often requires space. People need room to think, to process, to make decisions. And yes, sometimes room to make mistakes. And then number three, watch their actions, not their words, not their promises. One of the most important coaching lessons for parents is to pay attention to patterns, not their words, not their promises, not intentions, not explanations, but patterns. Actions reveal far more than their words. When parents focus on actions instead of repeatedly revisiting conversations, they often gain much greater clarity. Let me give you an example. Let's say your adult child continually spends money irresponsibly. You've already talked about budgeting. You've explained the consequences. You shared your concerns. Now, every time money becomes a problem, you repeat the same speech. But what if instead you simply said, "We talked about this, and I trust that you understand my concerns," and then allow them to take responsibility for their choices? Notice what changed. You're no longer chasing, you're no longer convincing, no longer arguing. You're allowing responsibility to remain where it belongs. Now, the hard truth about that, it may be difficult to hear, but there comes a point when parents must accept my child heard me. They just didn't choose what I wanted them to choose. And those are not the same thing. Sometimes parents confuse disagreement with not listening, but listening doesn't guarantee compliance. And adulthood means people get to make decisions, even decisions we disagree with. One of the healthiest shifts that a prodigal parent can make is moving from how do I make them listen to how do I respond wisely when they don't? And that is where your peace begins because one question focuses on controlling another person. The other focuses on managing your own response. And that is where your power actually exists. So, if you're constantly repeating yourself to your adult child, I want to leave you with this thought. Sometimes wisdom isn't saying it louder. Sometimes wisdom isn't saying it more often. Sometimes wisdom is recognizing that your child has already heard you. And at that point, the question is no longer whether you've communicated the truth. The question becomes whether you're willing to release the outcome. Your adult child has been given free will by God, just as you have. They will make choices, some good, some painful. Some that may leave you shaking your head and wondering what they were thinking. But repeating yourself won't change what only they can choose. So this week, before having that same conversation again, ask yourself, have I already clearly communicated my concern? If the answer is yes, perhaps it's time to step back, pray, and allow God and life to do what another conversation cannot. So before I leave, I want to give you a challenge. This week, I want you to notice how many times you've attempted to repeat something that you've already clearly communicated. And that is it. I'm Nina Simone. I thank you for spending a few minutes with me today, and I'll see you in the next video.